Hello and welcome to an update on our low spend challenge. This is going to be a bit more of a succinct update of our last 2 months of spending, focusing mostly on our variable expenses. If you'd like to see a more detailed look into our finances, then check out any of my budgeting videos where I give all of the details about all of our income, fixed expenses, debt payments, savings, and variable spending as well. Also, if you want to watch as it happens in real time, basically, you can check out one of my spending vlogs where I will update you every single day on what I've purchased or any kind of income that's come in. So let's go over all of the things that we spend our money on in March and April. So first of all, for our low spend challenge, we're probably doing things a little bit differently than most people. We do have our categories that we do not spend money on, or we try not to, yet we still have sinking funds for all of those categories, and we are still contributing to those sinking funds every single month in case there's a purchase that we have to make using them. So for example, we don't really want to be purchasing anything to decorate our home or any additional kitchen gadgets that we don't need or any kind of clothing or personal items that we don't need. However, sometimes those things need to be replaced, and so we would use the sinking fund for that category. So you will see some spending from categories, and some of it we probably shouldn't have been spending, but some of it was actually needs. So if you're new here, my husband and I are in our 30s. Our daughter is 19 months, which is just over a year and a half. And this is our second year doing this low spend challenge. We started it at the beginning of 2024 because I was on maternity leave and most of that time was unpaid. I was allowed to take 10 weeks worth of unpaid leave and 2 weeks of paid leave for maternity leave. So I spread that out over about 5 months. So I was getting reduced paychecks for about 3 months of that time. And so it was really important for us to cut down our spending, especially for the time when I wasn't making as much, because I do bring in more income than my husband does. And so we were almost living off of just his paycheck for a few months. And so we began this challenge to really cut back on our spending, really think about the purchases and whether we actually needed them or if they were just things that we wanted. We really wanted to break the grip of consumerism on ourselves and not just buy things in the moment, no impulse purchases, and try to reduce the clutter that we bring into our house as well, because we did have a new baby and we just didn't want to fill up our space, especially with things that she couldn't be playing with, because we really wanted to give her the freedom to run around the house when she was able to crawl and walk. So it was important to us to not bring in things that we didn't need and to reduce our spending as well. Another thing that came up shortly after we had started the challenge, which made it even more important, was we needed to replace our roof. So that was a huge expense, but we were able to get a zero interest loan for an entire year that we then focused really heavily on saving up that amount to pay it off so that we wouldn't have to pay any interest on our loan. And so we were able to do that and accomplish that by doing this low spend challenge and reducing our spending to basically just the bare necessities. And so we've loosened up a little bit this year on our spending. We're not so strict because my income is back to full time and we have paid off that roof, but we do have other debts that we are working on paying off, and those are really important to us to get those paid down. And we have been focusing also on some savings goals, mostly maxing out our HSA and my husband's Roth IRA. And so now that we've met some of those savings goals and we're working really hard on our debt payoff goals, this low spend challenge is helping us reach that debt payoff faster. And the longer that we do this challenge, the easier it actually becomes. So it's not quite so hard to resist impulse purchases now that we've been doing it for over a year. And previously, I wasn't very much of a spender. My husband is a little bit more, and we both struggle a lot at the grocery store, buying a lot of impulse purchases. And so that has been a really big focus area for us this year, especially was the grocery purchases, because we don't really shop. We don't use Amazon unless absolutely necessary, which I will get into something that we had to purchase off Amazon this month, but we hardly do any other kind of shopping besides grocery shopping and thrift shopping, which is also a little bit of our weakness. So that's a little bit about us. So let's get into some of the purchases that we've made in these past couple of months. So I'm going to go through in the order that I have everything on my budget spreadsheet, which if you've seen that, then this may be familiar to you. But I will tell you which category I'm talking about and whether or not that the purchase that we made was something that we should have been making or if it was something a little bit frivolous. So my first category is home. In March, we actually didn't make any home purchases. This category is mostly for home maintenance, although if we were purchasing any kind of decorative items or kitchen utensils, which we sometimes buy, those like kitchen appliances, those things would come out of this category as well. We didn't make any purchases in March, but in April we had to make some purchases. We have an in-ground swimming pool at our house, and we need to buy chlorine for that every single year. I like to buy the biggest size that I can, and I like to have it ready and available for when I open the pool. So I should be opening the pool very, very soon. May is really around the time that we open the pool in our area, sometimes early June. And so I wanted to have the chlorine that I needed and the tablets that I needed before I opened the pool. And also, there was a really good sale on the chlorine. I actually spent about half of what I typically spend on chlorine by buying the same amount, just by buying it a little bit earlier than usual. And then there was one other thing that we had to buy, which was a hose for my husband's vacuum cleaner. And then we also bought a filter for it because we wanted to get free shipping with Amazon. We don't pay for Prime. I think that paying for Prime just encourages you to buy more. I disagree with people who say Prime gets you free shipping because I think that you're paying every single month for shipping, whether or not you use it. And so if you're using Prime a lot, maybe evaluate whether you're using it so much to justify the fact that you're paying for it for shipping. And maybe if you can reduce your purchases on Amazon or group them together, because anytime you make a purchase over, I think, $35, you automatically get free shipping. So if you can group your purchases and make maybe one purchase a month that's $35 or more, then I think you'll be buying less and actually saving money in the long run because you won't be paying that $10 a month for Prime. But that's just my opinion. That's what I do. I try to avoid purchasing on Amazon as much as possible. These things like chlorine are things that I have to buy, and they are a lot more expensive at my local pool store, which isn't really a local store. If it was local and owned by local people in my community, I would be more inclined to purchase from there, but it is a chain store that's across the country. That's really the only pool store that I have access to, so I don't feel differently about shopping at Amazon versus a giant chain store. If I had a local pool store where I was actually supporting my community by purchasing there, I wouldn't mind paying a little bit extra for the chemicals to buy there. But we bought a vacuum hose and filter so that we could get the free shipping because for some reason the chlorine didn't count towards the free shipping, probably because there was two containers of 50 pounds each. And so that may have been why, and it probably had to be specially delivered because it is a chemical. So we bought a hose and filter for my husband's vacuum cleaner because the rabbits had chewed up the vacuum cleaner. So I think all of the home purchases that we made were necessary. Although there was something that we purchased for the home that I am including in a different category that I'll get into in just a little bit. So our next category on my sheet is groceries, which, as I mentioned, is one of our problem areas. Over the past 2 months, we spent $728.71 in groceries. In March, we had placed a bulk order with Azure Standard, which is where we get a lot of our bulk goods now. We used to shop at our local store for bulk goods. We have a bulk store available to us. But the prices were getting a little bit too much, whereas we can get them for half the price from Azure Standard. And right now, that's just what fits best in our budget. We do still buy a lot of things from our local bulk store. Most of our produce comes from there. We really like to buy their organic produce, and we really like to support them. But we have been buying from Azure for our bulk products lately. We get like 25-pound bags of different types of beans, 25-pound bags of flour, and other grains, and those last us for a really long time. We also bought laundry detergent from them. I think that was in March, which was over $100, but we got 5 gallons of it, so that should last us for many, many years. Additionally, we buy nuts from there, and then we store them in the freezer. We also have food grade buckets that we are able to store this stuff in so that we can buy so much of it and keep it for a long time, so none of it goes bad, because it's really important for us to reduce our food waste, because we don't want to be wasting money on food, buying food, and then throwing it away. Although we are a little bit fortunate in that we have rabbits that eat our scrap food. If things are starting to get wilty, we can feed it to the rabbits, and they love it. Additionally, we compost, and so any other additional food scraps, or if we accidentally let something go moldy, we can compost it and then use that again in our gardens. So we're trying to reduce our food waste as much as possible to save us money, and also we can compost and use that in the garden to hopefully grow some better produce that will then save us money as well. Our next category is car and gas, and this is mostly just for gas for my car. My husband has decided to pay for his own gas out of his own personal spending money, and so I don't really spend very much in this category very often, but car maintenance also comes out of this category, so that's things like oil changes and tires, which we had to buy in April. My husband needed new tires. He gets free oil changes on his car from the dealership that we bought it from for life. He gets those oil changes and car washes, but we did have to buy him new tires, and we accidentally bought the wrong size, and so we had to send those back and buy them again in the right size. And so we didn't get the return for those tires in April. We actually got it in May. So the numbers are a bit skewed. We ended up spending $1,466.48 on car and gas in March and April because we had the purchases of 8 tires instead of 4. After that refund came through, we ended up spending just over $800 in those 2 months on car and gas. Most of that was his tires. They were about $700. Typically, I only fill up on gas every 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, and it's about $30 a fill up. I drive a plug-in hybrid, so I usually get about 100 miles to a gallon, and that saves us a lot on gas. So car and gas is one of our necessary expenses. I think if we were to be purchasing things like car washes, which aren't necessary, that would fall into the no spend category, but we really only stick to necessary things for our car purchases. Our next category is health, and obviously this is a necessary category. We don't want to be not paying for health and getting sick and just not dealing with it. In the past 2 months, we ended up spending $102.78. This was a decrease from the previous 2 months, and actually all of that, except I think $10, was from a doctor's visit that my daughter had in December. We have a high deductible health plan, and so we pay quite a bit for doctor's visits, except for like the annual checkup type things. Those are typically free. But anytime our daughter is sick and needs to go to the doctor to get prescribed antibiotics or something, we have to pay quite a bit. And so in December, I think she went two or three times to the doctors because she kept getting sick from daycare. And so we were still paying those bills off this year. And in March, we finally paid that last one. Also, my husband went to the optometrist, and that was a $10 copay that he paid for that. Sometimes we pay for our health expenses with our HSA, but not very often because we're trying to invest that money. We have plans to eventually get our health expenses reimbursed with that HSA because there's no time limit on that. So 30 years from now, we could reimburse these expenses as long as we keep the receipts. So might be a little bit of a hassle to do that 30 years from now instead of just swiping the debit card today, but that's what we're planning to do to hopefully save on our health expenses now and in the future. My next category is pets, and as I mentioned, we have rabbits. We only bought them food so far this year. They need to go to the vet, but I keep postponing scheduling that. I also am afraid that our vet no longer sees rabbits. They're very hard to take to the vet because they're considered an exotic animal, so most vets don't handle them. They need their vaccines for the year, they need an annual checkup, but I just haven't been able to schedule that. So we ended up only spending $27.55, and that was just for a bag of food. A bag of food usually lasts them 2 months. I have 2 rabbits. I don't know if I mentioned that. The big bag of food lasts them about 2 months. They also eat hay and fresh vegetables. Their vegetables would come out of our grocery budget when we buy them, or we give them stuff that we grow in our garden. And their hay, we usually have to buy it locally from a farmer, and we usually pay cash, but we bought enough bales. We're running low, so we will be having to buy that in the near future. So stay tuned for that price. It's usually not very much. It's usually less than $10 a bale, which is a secret if you have rabbits, to try to find a local farmer that grows Timothy hay and buy a bale from them, because to buy hay from a pet store is insane. Before I started buying from a local farmer, you would buy a 90-ounce bag for over $20. And a bale is like 10 times that amount. So I'm getting, someone do the math for me. I'm getting 20 times the hay for half the price. So moving on to our next category, it's my daughter, any kind of spending that I have to do for her, which is very, very minimal. Usually it's just clothes as she outgrows them, but we made quite a large purchase of clothes for her in January when there was a sale at our local thrift store, and we bought basically everything that she needed for the rest of winter. Now that it's getting into spring and summer, we have had to pick up a few things for her, but because I also made purchases for myself at the thrift store, everything got categorized under clothing and personal, so we'll get into that. I did end up buying her 3 shirts, I think, and 2 pairs of shoes. She just started walking about a month ago, and it's so cute, but she needs shoes so that she can go outside at daycare. But I haven't spent anything on her in the past 2 months. We've been cloth diapering since she was born. We have used disposable diapers, and we have had to buy disposable wipes, but very infrequently. She wears maybe 2 disposable diapers in a week, and all the other times she's in the cloth diapers. So I think a box of diapers is over $20, and I guess normally she would need about a box a month. I actually have no idea because we have been in cloth diapers and very rarely in disposables. So this works really well for us. We have about 30 of them, which gets us through the week. And then I just wash them all on the weekends, and then she uses them throughout the week at daycare. So that has saved us a ton of money on diapers. We hardly have to spend anything on our daughter, just new clothes. We get a few hand-me-down toys from her cousins, so we haven't actually had to buy her any toys yet either. So that's been really great. Plus, she plays with a bunch of random things around the house. She loves jar lids. Really, she's really into books lately. We go to the library every single week. We pick her out at least 5 books, and she'll spend the week just playing with the books, reading them to herself, even though she can't talk or read, and it's just so cute. But we've really had to spend hardly anything on her, and I think it's really great. A lot of people talk about how expensive having a baby is, but I think after the initial cost of the car seats, the bassinet, the cloth diapers, I've only spent $30 on her so far this year, and it's been 4 months. I can go back and see how much I spent on her last year. Let me know if you're interested in how much I've spent on my daughter in her first year and a half, or maybe I'll do it at her 2 years, how much I've spent on her in 2 years, kind of a cost breakdown, because besides her hospital bills, we really haven't spent very much. We were fortunate that we got a lot of things from our families because this is our first baby. So actually we didn't pay for our car seats, and a lot of the big ticket items were purchased for us. We didn't really get any hand-me-downs just because the next youngest kid in our family was already 2 years old and they had already given away most of their stuff. But we haven't had to spend very much on our daughter, and we are very fortunate that we got many of the expensive things from our family. The next category I'm going to skip over. It's our phone, which we pay annually, so we haven't paid for that at all this year. Next, we have gifts and donations, and this is really just for gifts for our family. If they have birthdays, usually our nieces and nephews, we get them presents when we go to their birthday parties. We don't really buy gifts for anybody else in our family. We all think that as adults we can buy our own things, and we just like enjoying spending time together. So for birthdays or holidays, we just get together and eat together. Maybe we all do a potluck style thing, but we don't buy gifts. Only the kids get gifts, and that's fine. So we haven't spent anything in the past 2 months on gifts. My niece's birthdays are coming up over the summer, so we will be spending there, and we haven't really taken any opportunities to donate at all. So, but if something pops up, we do have a fund there for any kind of donations. My next category is clothing and personal, and this is where any spending that I do for myself, for my own personal spending money, comes out of this category, or clothing for myself, or any other kind of beauty things, but I don't actually spend anything in those categories really. I don't color my hair, I don't use any hair products, I don't paint my nails, I don't wear any makeup, so I don't have to spend on any of those things, which is really nice. I don't get my nails done, I don't get my hair done. If I did, then I would probably budget more than I do in this category, like if that was something that was important to me, but it's not important to me. I really just like to be natural as I am. But in this category, these past 2 months, we spent $41.35, and this was really only in April. We went to the thrift store twice. Both times we were looking for shoes for my daughter and shoes for me because all of my shoes were falling apart. I had bought some shoes a couple of years ago, and both of them at around the same time, like the soles came apart, split apart. And so for a couple of weeks, I was wearing a pair of Chuck Taylors that were more than 10 years old, that were in better shape than both of these newer shoes that I had bought. But it probably wasn't very work appropriate to be wearing shoes that were falling apart. So I had to get myself a new pair of shoes. I just wear tennis shoes to work, but ones that aren't falling apart are a little bit more professional than ones that are. So we went to the thrift store twice looking for shoes for me and my daughter. The first time we didn't find any, but I ended up buying pajama pants because my pajama pants were also ripping. But I kind of think that if it's completely unusable, then that's when it needs to be replaced. But I had sewed up these pants so many times and they just kept ripping, and it would be so annoying that I'd like take a step and accidentally step on the hem and they would just split up the leg. And so I finally bought myself some new pairs at the thrift store. And I also bought my daughter some t-shirts that first time. And then the second time when we went back looking for shoes, I did a little bit better. Found myself some shoes, found my daughter some shoes, bought her a shirt, but my husband was there and he bought some kitchen things. He had been looking for a steamer basket for steaming vegetables or something. And my dad had given us his old smoker, and so my husband wanted a cookie tray that fit into the smoker so that he could smoke things on that instead of, I guess, using foil or just directly sticking it on the tray. so it was easier to clean up. So he ended up finding both of those things at the thrift store. And so these were like kind of needs, but not absolute necessities. They're things that we had been looking for a while, that we wanted, that were on our list to look for at the thrift store. And when we found them, we bought them. So we really try to avoid impulse purchases, which can sometimes hit us at the thrift store, especially because there's always like so many neat things to look at. But we actually didn't really buy things that we didn't need this time around. So I think we did pretty good in the clothing and personal category, even though we spent more than we had all year just last month. And our final category that we spent in, well, we have two other categories. The travel and entertainment category, we didn't spend anything in because we haven't gone anywhere or done anything so far this year. And then in miscellaneous, nothing fell under our miscellaneous category in these past 2 months. So the final category that we actually did spend in was back in March. It was my husband's birthday, and so I treated him to takeout from one of our favorite restaurants. So in March, I spent $41.06 on takeout for him and I for his birthday. This came out of my own personal spending because it was a birthday treat for him. And that's the only restaurant spending that we've had these past 2 months. So we really try to do all of our cooking at home. Mostly it kind of saves us time because we just do all of the cooking on Saturday or Sunday, and then we have food ready all week long. It's actually faster to do that than to stop at a restaurant or to even order ahead and pick up at a restaurant because you have to spend that time looking through the menu, I guess. But also it saves us a lot of money because anytime I go out to eat, as soon as I like try what I ordered, I'm like, I could have made this for a fraction of the cost. There are things at this restaurant that I got takeout from that are hard to recreate. They do a lot of fried foods, so it's not the healthiest. And so I'm not very good at recreating deep fried things just because I don't want to go through the effort of deep frying things. So if we do want to treat, even though this restaurant's a little bit expensive, I think it's worth it because it's things that I wouldn't want to make at home. Now, something like Chipotle, it's definitely not worth it for beans and rice to pay $13. But at this restaurant, it's also a local restaurant and not a chain, so I do like to support them, and the food is really good, even though it's really bad for us. So that is everything, I think, for my update on my low spend for the past 2 months. Overall, we ended up spending $2,820.02 on variable expenses. Obviously, that is not as much, that's not what we spend overall. We have quite a bit of fixed expenses that we spend on and a lot of debt payments that we're paying off. But for variable expenses, things that we can control, I think we did really well. There are some things like the groceries and the gas that are things that we have to pay for. They're not like optional. And I think most of the things that we bought these past 2 months are things that we absolutely needed, with the exception of like dinner for my husband's birthday or some of the clothes that we bought at the thrift store. But I think that we buy things like that so rarely, and it was like my husband's birthday, that it's important to do those things, even occasionally, to keep us motivated on this low spend journey, because we have many years ahead of us to pay off all of the debt that we have and many years ahead of us for investing. And so I think it's important to not deprive ourselves completely. Even though we don't spend very much at all on our personal spending or things that we absolutely want, I think we're doing this at a sustainable pace. At least for me, I'm not a huge spender, and I don't limit myself when it comes to the things that I feel like I really need. So when I bought those things at the thrift store, I did get them even though like I didn't absolutely need them, but for quality of life. So I didn't have to keep spending so much time repairing my old pants that had been sewn so many times, and the frustration of ripping them constantly. Now I have new pants that hopefully won't rip for a little while, that I won't have to repair. I do like to repair them at least once or twice before I have to replace them. But this is sustainable for us. I think we do have things that are more important to us than material possessions. So things like fixing up the house, we need to renovate the bathroom, the deck, eventually the kitchen. So that's much more important to us than buying the latest gadget, because what are we going to do with that? I don't even have any time to, play a new video game or anything. So we're so busy with work, with caring for our daughter, that we don't really have much free time. And so spending our money on the things that we want to spend time on as well. That's going to the library on the weekends, that's taking our daughter for walks in the evening, cooking her meals and eating with her. Those are the things that are important to us and our family, not buying gadgets, playing video games, things like that. I use video games because I used to love playing video games. But now I don't have time for it, which is fine because I'm focusing my time and my energy on paying off debt, saving and investing so that we can become work optional in the near future, so I can be home with my daughter, which is definitely the most important thing to me right now. So this low spend year has really helped us focus on our priorities and realize what we should be spending money on, what we don't need to be spending money on. And I think it's been so great for helping us reach our goals. We have already paid off quite a bit of debt this year, invested quite a bit this year as well. We maxed out some HSAs, we maxed out some Roth IRAs. We are really making progress towards our very important financial goals. And you may have different goals that you're working towards if you're doing a low spend challenge, or even if you're not. But I think it's about to start storming here, so I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for watching to the end, listening to my update on my low spend challenge. Let me know in the comments if you're doing a low spend challenge, or if you have any questions or comments about the things I'm doing. I love to hear from you. I love any kind of encouragement that you give, or if you are telling me your story, I love to give you encouragement as well. If you're not subscribed and you'd like to see more of my family's journey as we pay off debt, then I would love to have you follow along. Thank you for being here.